Welcome back to my channel where creepy things happen. I'm your host. And tonight, we are going to be reading from the R Horror subreddit. So let's get into it. Horror, my bedroom door locks from the outside. I was home alone last night and I heard what sounded like screams in the middle of the night. Obviously, I was freaked out sitting in bed trying not to think about all the awful things that could be outside my bedroom door. That's when I noticed that my door handle was locked from the outside. When I moved into this apartment, I had the landlord come over and change the locks because the old keys didn't work. He changed the deadbolt and the doorknob lock. He also gave me 2 keys for each of them. I kept one set by my door and the other set in a little hidden lockbox that I keep on my bedside table. I never lock my door, even at night, so I always just use the key by the door to unlock and then leave it on the hook by the door. That night, I was getting ready for bed, and I started to notice that the door was harder to open than normal. Once inside, I turned off the lights and got into bed. That's when I started hearing what sounded like women screaming in pain. My boyfriend and I have been watching a ton of crime documentaries on Netflix lately, so this immediately triggered my fight or flight response. I tried to reason with myself, saying there were no windows open, no doors open, and my apartment is in a pretty safe building. But my mind went straight to intruders, serial killers, home invasion, etc. I sat there paralyzed in fear for a while until I realized that my door handle was locked from the outside. The deadbolt was definitely locked from the outside. I knew that I had unlocked it from that side because I have to use a different key for it. And I knew that my boyfriend didn't lock it either because he would have said something. I live alone and I don't have any friends or family who would be around this late that would have access to my keys. And I know that nobody in my building has ever had a key to my apartment. This was a brand new apartment building and nobody had moved in yet. I was literally home alone. And then I started thinking about how many times I've had this exact same feeling before. Maybe 6 months ago when I first moved in. Maybe a month ago when I was home alone and I thought that I heard someone break into the apartment next to mine. Every time I've heard weird noises, I always go check to make sure my door is locked. Which means that every time I did this, I ended up locking my door from the outside and then panicking because I queue and get back in. I've done this so many times now that I honestly could uneven tell you how many times I've been locked out of my apartment. I am very thankful that these have only been false alarms so far and that nothing bad has happened. But I seriously need to stop doing this. It's giving me an anxiety disorder. I guess that's why they call it locking yourself in a room. Because it really does feel like being locked in a room sometimes. Yeah, that makes sense. You should probably lock your doors at night. That seems to be like a pretty good idea. Even if you don't want to use the deadbolt, just use the handle. Lock it from the inside, and you won't have to worry about somebody locking it from the outside. Alright, let's move on to the next story. This next one is called I See Dead People. When I was little, when I was very young, maybe 7 or 8, my family and I lived in a small 2-bedroom house. 1 bedroom for my parents and 1 for me and my sister. The only bathroom was shared in the hallway. At night, we used to hear strange noises in the house. We assumed that it was just an old house settling or whatever. One night, my mom woke up in the middle of the night, and she heard a flushing toilet. She told us that we shouldn't be afraid of ghosts, because if we had nothing to do with them, they would have nothing to do with us. That made sense to my young mind. For the next few years, we continued to hear unexplained noises. Sometimes a door would open and close. Sometimes we would hear whispers. My dad would always blame me, but I never did it. I even had toys in my room at the time, and I would sometimes hear them moving. My parents would argue, and then eventually they would sleep in separate rooms. A few months after that, my parents got a divorce, and we moved to another house. One day my dad came over to pick me up for my weekend with him. I was playing, and I wasn't paying attention to what my dad was saying until I heard this. I see dead people. I stopped and asked him what he said. He repeated himself. I see dead people. I asked him again. I'm sorry. What? I see dead people. He said that's what the new place felt like. The new house was much bigger. It was an old Victorian house with at least 6 bedrooms. I instantly loved it. I started exploring the house, and I found my favorite hiding spot under the stairs. There were no closet doors on the 2nd floor, only curtains. There was a massive chandelier that hung down from the ceiling, the size of a dinner table. After a few weeks of living there, things started to happen. I would hear footsteps above my head in the attic. The lights would turn on by themselves. Drawers would slowly open. Doors would creak open. Whispers echoed through the halls. One day I was playing on the second floor and I heard whispering coming from behind the curtains of one of the rooms. I pulled the curtains aside and there was no room behind them. I was confused and scared. I ran to my dad and I told him what I had seen. He smiled and he said, "You're seeing dead people." So I started telling everyone that I see dead people. They would look at me like I was insane. I didn't know if I was or if I wasn't. To this day, I don't know if I'm crazy or not. But this one time, my mom was picking me up and my dad wasn't there. So my aunt answered the door and my mom came in. I was still telling her about the dead people. Then my dad came down the stairs and he looked at my mom and he said, "Did he tell you?" I nodded my head yes, and he sighed. Yep, he sees them too. She looked at me like I was a monster. As I got older, things only became more strange. I would walk around the house at night and I would see shadows darting around. One night I walked into my parents' room and they were both standing by the window staring into the backyard. I asked them what they were doing, and they said they were looking at the shed. I joined them at the window. The shed was our playroom. As children, we would draw pictures and play with our toys in there. But now it was boarded up, and there was a padlock on the door. My parents had a big fight one night, and my dad moved out. A couple of weeks later, my mom started seeing a man named George. George was always nice to me, and he always gave me candy, and he let me stay up late to watch TV. I liked him. One night I was awoken in the middle of the night, 2 loud footsteps in the hallway. Then I heard my mom scream. I ran downstairs and I saw George holding a knife with blood all over it. He dropped the knife and he hugged me and told me that everything was okay. I was confused, but I believed him. I went back to bed and my mom came in shortly after and she told me that George had cut himself. I never saw George again. My mom said that he went to visit his family, but I knew better. George never came back and my mom eventually found a new boyfriend. One night I was awoken to voices in my closet. I got out of bed and I opened the closet door. It was empty. I closed the door and I went back to bed. A few minutes later I heard the closet door open again and I heard my mom's voice. It was followed by heavy footsteps coming down the stairs. I got out of bed and I went to the top of the stairs to peer over and see what was going on. My mom was standing at the bottom of the stairs, with tears streaming down her face. She looked up at me and I could see the bruises on her arms. I never told anyone about what I saw that night. I didn't want to scare them. I didn't want them to think that I was crazy. But I knew that my mom was being abused. I didn't know that until one day I came home from school and there were police cars surrounding the house. I heard muffled sounds coming from inside. I remember kneeling on the ground and crying. When everything was over, my mom and I went to live with my dad. To this day, I don't know what happened to the men in my life. I still hear whispering and footsteps in my sleep. It's always in an old house. I hate old houses. Wow. Yeah, that is scary.
Thank you so much for watching.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of my channel. If you did, please leave a like. If you love this channel, consider supporting us through the link in the description. But otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye.